Filip Riker gost je na Balkanu skoro 20 godina. Profesionalni diplomata, karijeru je počeo kao portparol u State Departmentu. Odnosom sa medijima bavio se nekoliko godina kao predstavnik State Departmenta, držao je predavanja i davao intervjue o američkoj spoljnoj politici i diplomatiji. Riker se prvi put približava Balkanu 90-ih u ambasadi u Budimpešti, bio je šef odnosa sa medijima. Riker je bio potom američki ambasador u Makedoniji od 2008. do 2011. Već godinu i po u State Departmentu zadužen je za pitanje Balkana. Riker važi za dobrog poznavaoca prilika u ovom dijelu Evrope. Crnu Goru zadnji put je posjetio u maju ove godine. Mr. Riker, you were here in Montenegro last time in May, and actually this is your second visit in Montenegro in 6 months. So I don't mean to sound rude, but is this a good thing or a bad thing in a political sense?
Well, for me it's a pleasure to visit Montenegro. I work with 7 countries in South Central Europe as part of the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs at the State Department. And Secretary Clinton asked that I visit Podgorica as soon as I could after your elections and after our elections. And it was a great opportunity to have a full day of meetings in Podgorica, starting with Prime Minister Luksic. I met with the foreign minister, with the defense minister, with the justice minister, and of course with Milo Đukanović, who will soon become your prime minister again. And I met with the Speaker of Parliament, and of course with our embassy team, Ambassador Brown, and our team of professional diplomats who are here on the ground in Montenegro all the time.
You were here, as I said, in May. Now elections are over in Montenegro. We have the new prime minister, who is Mr. Đukanović. Do you think that, and you know the situation in Balkans very good, so do you think that Montenegro with old politicians in power is going forward or backward?
Well, first let me congratulate Montenegro and all the citizens of Montenegro on successful elections. You're absolutely right that you had elections, we had elections in the United States, and I think both of those elections were very good. Here in Montenegro you had a very high turnout. They were successful elections, they were deemed free and fair. That's a very positive step for a country that is young, as Montenegro is, in a neighborhood that over the last 2 decades has seen so much change and development of democracy and free market. And the U.S. government, of course, is very proud to be a partner with Montenegro. That's why it's always a pleasure for me to come here and visit, to exchange views and ideas with our counterparts here. And we will continue to work closely with whatever government is elected by the Montenegrin people. We know Milo Đukanović very well. Of course, he has served as your prime minister before. And he's someone who I have met with many times. I consider him a friend because he has very good insights on the whole region. And so I met with him in May. I met with him on earlier visits to get his views. He's a strategic thinker, and clearly the people of Montenegro, in casting their votes, have registered a degree of confidence in him, and the formation of a new government is still underway. And as I told Mr. Đukanović and ministers who are currently in power, we look forward to continuing our strong partnership.
So actually, when you meet with Mr. Đukanović, you don't talk only about Montenegro, you talk about regional issues as well.
I appreciate his views on the whole region very much. Obviously, he has been an important political figure in the region for 2 decades or more. And so as I do in all of the capitals I visit, I try to come with a regional perspective to talk about our bilateral relationship, but also look at the regional perspective. And of course, part of that is Euro-Atlantic integration, which is the key point of our policy for the whole region.
So did you talk about joining Montenegro, joining NATO with Mr. Đukanović and the other ministers you met today?
Obviously, Montenegro has had a policy aimed at becoming a member of NATO. Already, Montenegro is a strong partner with NATO. We work together in ISAF, of course, in Afghanistan, with common goals there, working shoulder to shoulder, our soldiers, along with other partners and allies. I think that's been a very successful mission, and we appreciate very much Montenegro's participation in that. Montenegro has long been active through our state partnership program, partnering with the National Guard from the state of Maine in the United States, and I think that can have a very positive effect on our military-to-military relationship, but also a civilian dimension in that, and those partnerships, those state partnerships, have been very effective throughout this region. And so we very much support Montenegro's aspiration to join NATO. Secretary Clinton underscored that at the summit last spring in Chicago, and we will continue to work with Montenegro in that direction.
This is on the high political level, and it's not a secret that Montenegrin high-level politicians are willing to join NATO, but on the field or on the ground, only 1/3 of Montenegrin citizens are actually in favor of joining NATO. You think that those numbers are worrying?
Well, I think what's important is to look at the experience of other countries in the region and to make an effort to understand what the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is all about. I would suggest, as do many, that in fact NATO has been one of the most successful alliances in maintaining peace for the entire time of its existence. Since the end of World War II and the formation of NATO in 1949, peace in Western Europe has led to prosperity of unimagined dimension. Countries who a century ago one would not have expected could work together have been allies. No two NATO countries have ever gone to war against each other. And so I think it's been a very successful alliance, and the expansion of the alliance beginning in 1999 has also been very successful. So if you look at the experience of Hungary, of Poland, of the countries in the Baltic region, of Croatia, I think there are many right here in the neighborhood who have seen that NATO gives you a level of security, of stability, and of confidence. U.S. policy has been to leave the door to NATO membership open to any country that is desiring of that. Montenegro has pursued that policy, and we very much believe that as people come to understand what NATO offers, what it's about, people will also see that it is a positive track for Montenegro.
However, these figures and these numbers don't change in time. Let me rephrase my question. Should the government be worried about these figures?
Well, I think these are issues, again, for Montenegro. NATO helps boost confidence of foreign investors. It is a fact that no country is pressuring Montenegro to join NATO. It's a decision that Montenegro needs to take for itself. We've discussed NATO membership and the great efforts that Montenegro has made, the reforms in the military, doing very well on the NATO path that was reiterated at the Chicago summit. The final decision lies with Montenegro and with its citizens, and we will always continue to be a partner of Montenegro and support Montenegro in the direction it wants to go.
If Montenegro wants to join NATO, Montenegro has to get an invitation for joining NATO, and there are some speculation saying that we could get that ticket or invitation in 2 years. However, do you think that we will get the invitation in case the numbers remain so low?
Well, I think NATO and invitations for membership are based on meeting certain criteria, undertaking reforms, meeting a set of standards that have been common for all those who have joined the alliance. And Montenegro will be held to the same standard. That is what the membership will be based upon. So I think it's better to talk about reforms and standards and principles, common values that are shared by members of the alliance, and work towards that rather than talking about dates.
When you say about standards, do you mean also about the rule of law, fight against corruption? Is that also linked to NATO and to NATO standards?
Absolutely. I mean, NATO, as I said, is very much about a shared set of values. All members of NATO are democracies. Throughout this region now you have democracies. Montenegro is a democracy and, of course, needs to continue working on a number of reforms. NATO and the European Union, the European Commission, issue annual reports that evaluate progress on those reforms. And those are very positive tools that your leadership can use to evaluate where more work needs to be done. Some progress has been made in Montenegro and in other countries in the region, and of course there's still more to be done.
When you say some progress, can you tell me what do you have in mind?
Well, I think we've seen strengthening in the criminal procedure code, strengthening in rule of law. There have been active legislative measures taken in this regard, and more needs to be done. It's a continuous effort. We certainly know that in the United States. We don't have all the answers in the United States, but we perhaps have far many more years of experience in dealing with these issues, in working through legislation and regulation to fight crime, corruption, to bring rule of law to be level so that there's a confidence for investors who know that they are facing a level playing field in terms of the legal environment in which they work and are willing to invest their money. And that's positive for economic growth.
But when you talk with common people on the street, they will tell you that they don't feel all the good things Montenegro has done until now. You know, when you talk with somebody on the street, they don't actually feel all the changes in the legal system. What would you say to those people?
Well, I think some people should step back and take a look where you have come. You know, I spend so much time in the Balkans, and I'm used to people often having a very negative attitude. Pessimism permeates. And I think if you step back and think about where Montenegro was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I just take a look as a visitor who comes to Podgorica to see the progress. There's a lot more to be done, and people have high expectations, and they're right to have expectations. They should want the most out of their society and their opportunities. That's certainly what Americans want. We're never fully satisfied. But think about where this region was 100 years ago, in the midst of the Balkan Wars, leading up to World War I. It was a time when the people of this region had very little say over their futures or their lives, when these wars were carried out by old empires, great power, politics and games. Now, every one of the countries in this region is a democracy, where citizens have rights. Citizens choose their leaders through free and fair elections, and those leaders are then responsible to their citizens. So really things have come a long, long way, and I think there's a level of stability, security in Montenegro that can be matched by levels of prosperity if you continue on the reform path. And we believe that the Euro-Atlantic institutions, NATO, the European Union, represent the best that can be offered in terms of a brighter future.
When we talk about Montenegro, we have to talk also about the Balkans, which was in the world news coverage these days because of the sentence in the ICTY regarding two Croat generals. And that sentence actually sparked the same pictures and the same feeling we could see 20 years ago. Was that sentence for you a surprise?
Well, we noted the judgment.
And the reactions as well.
We noted the judgment of the appeals chamber from the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. That is a tribunal that was created by the United Nations in order to deal with the issues that arose from the horrific things that happened in recent decades in this part of the world. The focus here has to be on reconciliation, and judgments are made on the basis of laws and analysis, and those judgments need to be respected, but we also need to be able to move on and look to the future. And I think it's always a mistake to get too caught up in the past. There's great opportunity ahead for all the people of this region. I think if you step back and try to step away from the emotional aspects of this, you can see that a process of national reconciliation has to take place. That's what the European perspective is all about. That's what NATO is all about, is reconciliation. Think of where Europe, the entire continent, was in 1945, and look how far people have come in terms of reconciling old enemies, finding that they have much more in common when they work together on a set of common values. And I think that's very possible here in the Balkan region as well.
So, were you surprised with the sentence?
I think people realize, well, they have emotional reactions to these things, and people are entitled to their views and opinions. You know, justice does not always appear balanced to all. And so the judges on this UN tribunal have to make decisions based on the knowledge and the cases before them. And that's not going to make everyone happy. What's important is that we learn to move forward, to think about reconciliation, to think about what is going to give ourselves a better future, all of us, and not as much focusing on the past.
When we talk about region, where do you see the weak parts of the region? Weak.
Oh, I prefer to focus on the strengths. You know, this region has so much to offer. And if you take a look, as I suggested, over the past 20 years or the past 100 years, and how far this region has come, U.S. policy has always been, since 1945, to see a Europe whole, free, at peace, democratic, and increasingly prosperous. And there is absolutely no reason that all of the people of this region cannot enjoy those same goals, to share the same values, to have opportunities to raise their families so that their children and grandchildren can have better futures. And I think that's what we've tried to create. You know, the world is a difficult place. There are great challenges, not just here in the Balkans or in Europe, but all over the world. Secretary Clinton demonstrates that. The issues that we in the United States are dealing with, the Secretary herself involved, whether it's traveling to help bring a ceasefire in Gaza, the Middle East peace process to which President Obama is so committed, dealing with Iran and the threats of their nuclear program, unrest in Syria, the so-called Arab Spring that has taken so much attention in the world over the past couple of years, broader issues like global warming. I mean, there are a lot of issues in the world because we all share this same planet.
Sure, but
and that's what we have to focus on.
Excuse me for interrupting you, but anyway, when you are here in Montenegro, Montenegrins are only worried about their future. So we often hear that Montenegro is a good example, as you said, in the region. Is it always like that? Or are there any countries which are better maybe in some parts than Montenegro?
Oh, I always stay away from trying to compare one or another. You know, a country is made up of its citizens, and it's how the citizens feel about their country. The United States is very proud to be a partner with Montenegro. We were very pleased to see Montenegro make the progress it has since you regained your independence. And it's a strong history that you have, and at this time when we look back over the past century, there is a lot of history. And if you think about the progress that Montenegro has made even in recent years, I think it's really something for everyone to be proud of. More importantly, though, there's always more that can be done. And you can have a great future ahead of you, and the United States wants to support you in whatever future you see for yourselves. We want to keep open the doors of Euro-Atlantic integration. We're very pleased with the partnership that we have. We want to continue supporting Montenegro as a friend to the extent that you want us here and involved with you. And our embassy is very dedicated to that. You have an active ambassador and embassy in Washington. I'm very pleased to be able to work with Ambassador Jovanovic on a regular basis. And I think working together, one very small country, Montenegro, and one very big country, the United States, we actually have a lot in common.
Thank you so much, Mr. Riker.
Thank you.